Can you take us back to Up and how and why Doug was first introduced and how how you came to voice the character?
Let's see, Doug. Doug goes way back in my career, back to like 2005, I think, is when we were first talking about him. But Doug was part of a movie that Pete Docter and I were crafting that didn't see the light of the day. And it was a dog that, through strange circumstances, could talk. So when we moved on to do an idea of an elderly gentleman going on an action adventure, we thought, wouldn't it be fun to bring this talking dog along? How do we do that? And so we cooked up this idea of a dog collar. And then I decided to voice Doug. I had written his dialogue, and I just treated him like I treat my dogs, the way I talk to them. Like, dog, you're a good dog. And just tried to summon up all the sweetness of all the dogs I've ever owned. And that's sort of where he got started. I didn't know what he'd sound like when I stepped up to the mic. It just kind of came out, which is pretty cool.
Carl was not Doug's biggest fan at first. How did they bond, and what happened with their relationship after Up?
Yeah, Carl, it was interesting because Carl was not a fan of Doug's at the beginning. And that goes along with his arc in Up. Really, Russell and Doug and the bird are a new family put in front of Carl. Will he accept them? Will he accept the challenge of connection again? You know, and it's not until Ellie at the end of the film says, go have a new adventure, does he really embrace that. And so when he moves back to suburbia in Doug days, it's really about him taking the next step on connection and adventure, and it's them taking care of each other. And in Carl's date, it really pushes, can Carl move to the next step and honor Ellie? And he grapples with that.
In the short, how does Carl end up accepting an invitation for a date, and why is he so uncomfortable with it?
So Carl is, at the beginning of the short, he's talking on the phone to a friend of his, a woman named Mrs. Meyer, which is the name of my first art teacher when I was a little kid. But and she is involved with taking the dogs that we saw in Up and bringing them to the senior center. And so he's friends with this woman. And so he's talking away, and all of a sudden she asks this question, and without thinking, he says yes. We don't know what she asked, but he immediately goes into a deep existential crisis, like, why did I say yes? What am I doing? You know, and feeling bad, and all of this is grappling with something that honors Ellie. We wanted to make sure we honored Ellie through this whole thing. We wanted Carl to have a really tough time with this, and then come to the conclusion that Ellie would have wanted him to do this.
How does Doug try to help Carl? What are some of his suggestions he makes?
Well, of course, Doug gives suggestions that are purely dog-like. And that's the fun of Doug. We don't want him to be just a talking character. We want him to be a dog. And so a lot of his advice is just simple, throw the ball, wag your tail kind of advice. But you realize in this short that Doug, now having lived with Carl, is very empathetic with his emotions. So when Carl feels sad, Doug immediately feels sad. And I think Doug has grown, become a little more sophisticated, and is able to really maybe put voice to his dog advice a little bit better than he could have earlier on.
Why did you want to explore and develop shorts starring Carl and Doug? What is Doug Days, and where can people see these shorts?
So we decided that to continue this this Up experience, it would be best to do these as a little mini shorts. Shorts played a big part of our lives. And just for a lot of reasons, shorts really fit. We could put them on Disney Plus. They weren't as long, and we had good resources. But we just wanted to revisit the world. You know, I had so much fun working with Ed Asner and writing and voicing Doug in Up. And Pete Docter and I loved this film, and we thought, well, why not bring it back in this short form so we can see where Carl has gone. What's his next step in life, living with Doug? And also, we're just happy that we got to work with Ed Asner again.
Explain. Are you excited about Carl's Date being in the theaters? Explain how this marks a return to the tradition of pairing a short in theaters with Pixar feature films.
At first, Carl's Date was meant to go on to streaming, and then the thought came about as, well, why not revisit our tradition of putting shorts in front of our films, which is one of my favorite things. That's what we had as kids. You'd see shorts in front of Disney films and things like that when we were kids. And so it went, and I had no idea that it would be in front of Elemental, but it was interesting that we're dealing with someone who's toward the end of their life, dealing with moving on and love, and pairing with the beginning of a romance in Elemental. We were so happy to see it on the big screen with that shared audience experience, and so we feel very lucky.
You spoke of Ed Asner.
Yeah.
How did Ed Asner bring such magic to Carl, and how is this short a nod to the late actor?
Well, Ed Asner, it was just so fun to work with him. You know, what he brought to the role was himself, because he is Carl Fredricksen in real life. Cantankerous. He's earned the right to say whatever he wants to say, and that's refreshing, frankly. He's been through so much. So he brought the reality of a senior citizen who was much like Carl. And we knew it was going to be him. It had to be him. I would have been heartbroken if Ed hadn't played Carl.
Why do you think audiences love Doug so much?
You know, audiences love Doug, I think, because he just represents the truth of dogs and pets. He says what dogs say instead of singing and dancing or whatever. He is a dog, and he's joyful. He brings the best of dogs, the loyalty, joyfulness. He's naive. You know, all the things we love about our pets, he comes forward. And I think also the fact that he loves Carl. He wants to take care of Carl. I think that's endearing as well. But just his, silliness and dog-like behavior makes up a joke about dead squirrels and things, Doug has a little bit of wolf in him, just a little bit of wild in there, like all dogs. But we see our own dogs in Doug.